So thank you all for joining. And like I mentioned, if you missed it, feel free to put your name and what you do in the chat so everyone can see who we have here with us. And I'm going to go through some slides, and then at the end, we'll have time for questions. Feel free to throw things in the chat throughout if you'd like. And I will make sure to get to them at the end, or maybe I'll answer a few as I'm going if I can. We're here for the mentor orientation for the 2024-25 cohort of the Illinois Green Schools Project. And this orientation is being recorded and will be sent out to all of you in a follow-up email and with a PDF of the slides. Just some logistics, if you're able to just stay muted until the end, and then you can unmute and ask questions if you'd like, or put questions in the chat throughout. I'll just get started. So today's agenda, we're just going to run through who we at Illinois Green are and what we do here, the program, the specific work that the mentor is asked to be a part of, and some kind of considerations and next steps. So Illinois Green is a member-driven nonprofit working to promote buildings and communities that give people better, brighter, healthier places to live, work, and learn. We foster a growing and vibrant green building community with programs and advocacy and education driven by our volunteers and members. It's our goal to combat climate change in Illinois by making sure that net zero buildings are feasible, affordable, and commonplace in Illinois by 2050. And as local hubs for community building and development, we know that schools play an important role in promoting sustainable solutions across the state. So the program is a year-long sustainability initiative designed for K-12 schools in Illinois, where participants form a green team at their school with school stakeholders, identify some sort of a sustainability need and goal, and reduce their school's impact by designing and implementing a personalized, no to low cost sustainability project. The primary goals of the program are to craft a holistic vision of sustainability to guide and support schools towards decarbonization, empower educators, school administration, and the school community to create healthy, sustainable learning environments, and celebrate achievements and create a pathway to federal recognition through the U.S. Department of Education's Green Ribbon Schools program. Green Ribbon is a program that acknowledges schools that have made significant advances in reducing their environmental impact and costs, improving their schools' health and wellness, and improving their schools' environmental education and literacy. The resources we've developed for schools this year directly reflect these goals and include evaluation metrics that stem directly from the Green Ribbon application. We're hoping that by strengthening the tie to national recognition, we set schools up to aspire for larger sustainability action in the future. So in terms of the school's participation in the program has 3 stages, the first being the completion of the sustainability workbook, the second being the execution of a sustainability project that is developed based on the workbook, and the third is receiving recognition. The primary objective of the mentor is simply to help your school complete the sustainability workbook, which is stage 1 of the program. The general timeline of the project is that schools are currently registering for the program and will be doing so through November 11th. And then the sustainability workbook is due January 31st. So that's kind of the most important dates to cover for this scope. But just to give you an idea of what the school does fully, the school finishes their workbook, and then they have an opportunity to receive grant funding, and I'll get into all this in more detail. And then we ask for some sort of a project report by May 2nd, and then have this an awards and accomplishments celebration at the end of May. So what is the sustainability workbook? This is a collection of 3 resources designed by Illinois Green, which we're debuting through this year's cohort. And I want to mention that, and that this is a new addition to the program. So all feedback about your experience moving through it with your school is welcome and needed. So please reach out to me at any time with thoughts or suggestions. We're hoping that even though these resources are somewhat technical, having a mentor present to help schools understand the language and the importance of the considerations within the resources, and having a mentor to help them keep on track and focused will make the completion of the workbook achievable. The program has been designed so that it can be executed completely virtually or hybrid, depending on the needs, wants, and locations of the schools and mentors. And I'll get into all of that later more, but it's up to you and your school to communicate about how you'd like to meet to work through these resources. So the first chapter is the self-assessment. And this resource is used to discover more about the school's physical space, as well as their relationship to sustainability in terms of infrastructure, operations, and culture and health and wellness. And through this first resource, schools might need help with defining key terms, understanding why they're doing it and the relevancy of specific metrics, gathering appropriate stakeholders to participate in the completion of the resource. And I have a link in here. You'll all receive these slides, and I'll show this link in a minute. We've created a little document that kind of lists out all the different types of school stakeholders and what they might gain from participating in sustainability work. And then they might also need help figuring out who at their school might know the answers to the questions. The teacher who will be your primary point of contact at the school will definitely not immediately know the answers to all of these questions. And another important aspect of the mentor is to help frame the results of the self-assessment in a positive light and just contextualize the scale and scope of sustainability work within a building and how every no or I don't know is an opportunity for the future. So I'm gonna see if I can click and link away to the actual document, and it might I might need a sec to get this in the right place. Let's see. Can you all see this screen? It's loading.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. So this is a link that you've all received, and this is where all of the downloads for the sustainability workbook are living, including a syllabus, which we're giving to all schools that has it's a syllabus basically of the whole program from the perspective of the school in terms of what they're going to be doing, what they need, and so on and so forth. So if that's interesting to you to get more of their perspective on the program, you're welcome to read through that. It's just, yeah, it's got it all written out. But the first chapter is the self-assessment, and I just want to show you all what this looks like. 1 minute. So this is a resource we created with metrics in 3 categories. The first is environmental impacts, and this covers sort of physical space, infrastructure, and some operational questions that are focused on energy, water and grounds, waste management, and alternative transportation. And then there are 2 other sections in the self-assessment that encompass health and wellness and effective environmental literacy. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to give you those 3 sections because it'll become relevant later. The metrics scale from things that are pretty achievable to things that are less immediately achievable. We definitely don't expect a school to be able to check yes to being a currently all-electric building. But the hope with this resource is that it gives them a way to think about the school holistically and see the vision for the future and all of the different ways that they could choose to address sustainability. So yeah, schools will go through that, and then they will move on to chapter 2, which I'm going to go back to slides for a second. Give me a second here. So chapter 2 is the completion of a building walkthrough. We've created 3 building walkthrough guides. One is focused on energy, one is focused on water, and one is focused on waste. And the hope here is that these are a way to help the school dive deeper into their physical space and identify any sort of low barrier adjustments or upgrades that they could plan to tackle through the project. It will be important to communicate with your school to determine how you want to complete this resource. We'd love to have mentors come out to schools to execute a walkthrough together in person with the school. Not every school is in Chicago, and not every school is interested in having someone come out in person. Some schools have like really complicated security measures that people have to go through to visit and or are just otherwise uninterested. So we think there are ways that you could also participate in the walkthrough via like a FaceTime on a phone or Zoom, or you could just plan to meet before and after to look through the guide and identify like where they should look in the building to find things that relate to various questions, and then meet afterwards to discuss what they found. It will also be important for the school to get the facilities manager or some sort of a grounds director involved in all of this. So mentors can also provide a great service in, again, just reminding, sorry, I have a cough right now, reminding schools to connect with multiple stakeholders while they go through these resources. And particularly schools, yeah, again, might need help connecting with those people, locating utility spaces throughout the school, and identifying what from this list of metrics is worth, thinking through further and aspiring to in the future, and understanding their technical systems and maintenance strategies. And again, I'm going to show you this very, very quickly. So all three are here. The school only needs to do one, and they go through a list of questions that span from, are you able to access energy bills, to do you know how many appliances are plugged in different rooms of the school and whether they're being used regularly. Lots of stuff like that. And that's all I'm going to show about this. And then the third chapter of the workbook is the project outline. So this is at the end of the workbook, and the goal is to have the school outline and write out their plans for the year, including deliverables and a timeline for a low barrier, high impact project. So projects that are successful should include a strong tie to sustainability and should integrate at least one metric from that environmental impact section of the sustainability or of the self-assessment, that first section that's kind of like physical space and tangible upgrades, and combine it with one metric from either the health and wellness or effective environmental literacy sections of the self-assessment. And the hope there is that a school would have a project that includes some sort of a physical change, and then also includes some sort of an education piece or an experiential learning opportunity, or something that kind of like touches on the culture and practices of the school, as well as just, maybe adding some like occupancy sensors to lights in different rooms. And that I'll get into more later is another way that schools can consider how they might want to incorporate students into their work. So things that might be helpful for schools to have from a mentor during this process are help identifying realistic goals and milestones throughout the time given, considering community partnerships and additional funding opportunities past what we can offer, and finding ways to incorporate benchmarking and data tracking, which is definitely something that does not come naturally to a lot of educators because they're just not thinking about it. So it's useful to be able to show them platforms for that kind of work and consider even like very low key versions of data tracking, checking on utility bills before and after making a change or something like that. So at the very end of the outline, there's a section where we have the mini grant application for the year. So through the program, schools have an opportunity to apply for a mini grant of up to $1,000 to help cover project costs. But this is only eligible to schools that complete all three resources of the workbook. And again, this application is found at the very end of the last chapter of the workbook, so that they've already kind of shared every information they could about what they're doing. And then what's left over is for them to outline the materials or services that they need for their project, how those items relate to their sustainability goals and the metrics from the self-assessment, the significance of those items to the project work, and the estimated cost of the items. And I also want to note, and I'm noting this to schools too, that we have a limited amount of money to offer to schools, and schools should not assume automatically that they will be funded or funded in full for their project. So we highly recommend that schools consider additional funding opportunities, and I will talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So like I said, to supplement funding, if a school has bigger goals or just wants to diversify, we definitely think that schools should consider finding additional funding and partnership opportunities. And in our personal experience, it can be a lot simpler and more reliable to look into local fundraising or partnerships with local organizations or companies that do relevant or similar work, versus pursuing a lot of grant writing and funding, because there are so many people applying for grants and it takes a long time sometimes. So our general tips are to help a school research locally relevant businesses. If the school is doing like some sort of a water reduction project and finds a landscaping company nearby that might want to help them fund or donate some amount of like native plants or hoses, or I don't know, something like that might form a relationship. And you might be able to help your green team consider ways to make that professional ask and use like the right language to do that, and help your school determine which project goals can be accomplished without funding and which ones can't, just to like have priorities and plans in line. In terms of resources that we can offer for you to help schools do this, I want to acknowledge that we don't have that many in this moment, and that it's a priority of ours to work on ways to help with this process. We know that funding can be a major barrier for schools, and we're working on developing resources. If you have thoughts or suggestions, please feel free to reach out. We'll also definitely make sure to share relevant grant opportunities that we come across, and can connect mentors to other mentors or other people in this sphere who have more experience if you feel like you need some advice on how to approach a specific issue. One of our main powers is convening. So the workbook is due on January 31st. This gives schools about 3 months between now and then to complete those 3 resources and submit them all in one go to us by the deadline. And I want to make sure that it's known that it's the school's responsibility to be physically filling out these forms and to save them and submit them to us at the end. The mentor does not need to actually be doing the writing or the physical work there. They're just there to help think things through. So what happens if your school is not able to complete the workbook by January 31st? We are communicating to schools that it's okay if they need more time to complete that first stage of the program, because all climate action is important and we want to celebrate sustainability at all stages. We know that educators have really busy schedules and a lot of demands, and sometimes things just take a longer time than we hope they would. So schools are able to extend that first stage of the program and submit their workbook in the following cohort if they need more time to complete those 3 resources. But our school mentors, the expectation is really only to be there to assist from October to the end of January. So if you're interested in continuing to work with your school, we definitely welcome that and would not stop you from continuing to meet with them. But the hope would be that that might mean just spacing the same kind of 4 or 5 meetings over a longer period of time versus like having to meet with your school once a month for an entire year. If you feel like you get to the end of January and you've completed your mission, it's okay if you don't want to continue with your school. We can help them work through the workbook and submit for the next year. So in stage 2, hypothetically, the mentor has completed all of their expectations. If you are interested in continuing some sort of a relationship with your school into their second stage of the program, which is executing the project, again, we won't stop you. We definitely welcome continued work. But it'll just take some conversations between you and your school directly to decide that and determine what that means for the two of you. And then staff will be here to support and help in any ways necessary. And otherwise, if you want to follow up with the schools and find out how it all went, we will have our celebration event at the end of May, and we welcome all mentors to join in. It's a virtual celebration. And we're also going to be making a one-page project profile that details the work of each school throughout the year. And we'll put those on the website and you can read through them. And they can be really fun to see and find out what all the school got up to. So your first meeting with your school is the time to kind of like really get to know each other and make plans for this time period of work together. So I want to just go through some thoughts and considerations for that first meeting. We'll be connecting schools to mentors throughout October and into early November. And I'll let you know when we found a school to pair with you with, and then I'll send a connecting email to you and that school to introduce you to each other, and then you'll go from there. So during a first meeting, really, I just want to kind of like note that you're both two people who have a similar goal, and I think that it can help a school to understand the benefits of having a mentor if you take a moment to share your professional background, why you're interested in sustainability, your ties to the program, why you're volunteering, and describe to them some of the ways that you can be helpful. They will have received all of the same information, but just face-to-face or virtual face-to-face reminding a school of why you're here and what you can help them achieve, I think is really useful. And so I also want to note, and I note again later, that schools might come in with their own sort of like interests and goals right off the bat for the program. Our hope is to be able to like take those goals into consideration and still have them move through the workbook resources as a way to have a more educated background in those goals and find like deeper ties to sustainability within those goals. And it is very possible that a school could be really interested in a water program and you have a background in energy. And that is just the way it is. It's our job to support their vision and not create it for them. But if a school is looking for ways to reduce their impact and is open to hearing about your expertise, it makes a lot of sense to explain to them your specific background and maybe even find ways to combine their goals with your own. So again, communication is really important throughout this. We are acting as connectors and we will be sending emails throughout the process to keep schools on track and share deadlines and resources. But it's important for the mentor and the school to create a communication plan for themselves to avoid communication breakdown. So important to talk to your green team leader or point of contact with the school about how often they're available to meet, what times of the day they tend to be free, what their preferred methods of communication are, and to not hang up until you've planned your next meeting. I think that's a great way to avoid drop off. And in that first meeting, if your first objective is to complete the self-assessment. So discussing that self-assessment with them and considering how long that might take, who they want in the room, and when you want to plan to do that is a good thing to do. So some last considerations. Student participation is not a direct mandate of this program. If you've participated in past years, it used to be something that we kind of required, and this year it is not. We want to leave schools open to being able to have the more like administrative conversations that are needed, and not feeling like bad about not wanting students to learn about utility information, billing information, to do those like larger goal conversations just as adults in a room with adults, and then allow the green team to then consider ways they would like to involve students on their own. So because of that, you may or may not get to interact directly with students through this program. If you're interested in a volunteer experience that's very focused on student interaction, this is not necessarily that experience. And if that's a deal breaker for you, please reach out. I totally understand that, and I want to make sure everyone understands that that might not be how this goes. So yeah, we don't require student participation, but we do hope that schools will find ways to incorporate students, because sustainability is not something that one person can do alone, and building and fostering ownership within the school community is really important to success in these projects. So we've found in the past that students are a really great asset when a school wants to make some sort of a structural change, but also incorporate some sort of behavior change or education campaign around that change. Students can make art and signs, and student groups can have project responsibilities in terms of sharing with the school like how to properly compost, or making a video for all schools to watch about proper conduct around recycling. There are a lot of ways that students can get involved, and I think it's great to kind of help a school consider those ways, but it is up to the school. A few other notes. Like I said, you may or may not end up on a project that relates directly to your professional work. And I think, like I said, I kind of already covered this. I think there are ways to mix interests, but please try to refrain from pushing too hard towards one of your own interests, if the school seems like they're going in a different direction. You may or may not get to visit your school in person. I also mentioned this already, but if you're assigned a school that isn't close by, is a rural area, or just prefers to keep things virtual, we will work around what their interests are and their goals, and you may or may not get to join in person. I also just want to remind everyone that your school contact is probably an educator, and they have a lot on their plates, and they might struggle with communication. If you have communication issues, please reach out and I can try to help. And again, if the timeline isn't working out, it's okay for them to move their stage 1 process into the rest of the year. Yeah. So next steps, this is like the end here, and then we'll do some questions. Next steps are, we're still recruiting schools for the current cohort until November 11th. And so we won't know our exact numbers until then. And I've mentioned this to a lot of you, but I just do want to like disclaimer that we do tend to receive more mentor applications than schools, and we might not be able to pair every mentor with a school this year. We're going to try to start pairing schools and mentors as we receive them, so that they have as much time as possible to get started. So some folks might be paired earlier than others, but we hypothetically will have schools joining up until the 11th, and we'll be working through that pairing process. And we'll make sure to have all matches finalized by the 18th. So we'll be in touch with you about all of this as soon as we can. And we will make sure to reach out. Even if you aren't being paired with the school this year, we'll reach out by the 18th to let you know directly how things played out. And my final note is just that this program is coordinated by myself and my colleague Miranda, and we are always available to help and can direct you toward resources. There are resources on our website Some are we have toolkits for specific projects. If a school wants to just like follow some step-by-step guidelines, we have some of those, links to those. There are also resources about how a school might go about forming a climate action plan or thinking through larger sustainability work, and everything in between. So definitely check out the website resource page, and reach out to us if you need any other assistance. We're happy to connect you to other mentors that might have experience with the thing you're working on, or generally be there to help brainstorm and problem solve. And yeah, I will be in communication throughout and sending regular emails. And I'd also love to be able to follow up with you all about your experiences and feedback. We are doing a few things differently this year, so I hope it all is successful, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it all. So I'm going to stop sharing, and if anyone wants to like unmute and ask questions, I'm happy to answer questions there or answer questions from the chat. Also, yeah, that's the end of my presentation. If you need to go, that's okay too. You'll get all of this, including the Q&A portion in a recording afterwards. And again, thank you all for being here and for volunteering. We're really excited, and I'm so appreciative to have all of you here and excited about our mission. Yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah, feel free to leave if you've got what you needed. But I will stay on here for a couple minutes in case anyone wants to ask any questions.